Welcome back to Mindset Motivation, where science meets motivation to transform your life from the inside out. Today's episode is a game changer because we're uncovering the real reason fat loss feels so frustrating and unsustainable for so many people. You might be eating clean, hitting the gym, tracking every calorie, and still the scale barely moves. Sound familiar? Here's what no one tells you. It's not just your body that's resisting fat loss. It's your brain. That's right. Your brain is the command center for your cravings, your energy, your habits, and your hormones. And if it's stuck in survival mode, no amount of willpower or dieting will create lasting change. But here's the good news. Once you understand how to work with your brain, not against it, fat loss becomes easier, more natural, and actually sustainable. In this episode, I'm going to show you how to reset your brain's fat loss circuitry in just 14 days, using cutting-edge neuroscience, stress reduction strategies, and behavior change tools that actually stick. This isn't just another diet hack. This is deep transformation from the inside out. Let's dive in. Let's begin with one of the most misunderstood reasons fat loss becomes frustratingly difficult. Your brain is actively working against it. Most people think fat loss is just about eating less and moving more. That's not entirely wrong, but it's incomplete. What's really happening is that your brain, specifically your hypothalamus and brainstem, monitors and adjusts your metabolism like a thermostat. And when stress and poor sleep get in the way, that internal thermostat gets thrown completely off track. I want to walk you through exactly how that happens and what you can do to reset it in the next 14 days. First, let's talk about stress, because it's more than just a mental state. When you're under chronic stress, meaning not just during a single bad day, but over the course of weeks or months, your body elevates cortisol. Cortisol isn't always bad. It's essential for survival, but when it's elevated all the time, it acts like a brake on your fat-burning machinery. You start storing more fat around the abdomen, your cravings increase, and your body becomes more efficient at holding on to energy, meaning fat. Why? Because your brain interprets stress as a threat. It doesn't know you're stressed about a deadline or your inbox. It just knows something's wrong, and it prepares you for famine or danger by slowing metabolism and encouraging energy storage. This gets worse when you're not sleeping well. Sleep isn't just rest, it's a neurochemical reset. If you're sleeping fewer than 6 hours, or if your sleep is fragmented, you're setting yourself up for a hormonal disaster. Two key hormones, leptin and ghrelin, are controlled almost entirely by your brain and are deeply sensitive to sleep. Leptin tells your brain you're full, ghrelin tells your brain you're hungry. When you don't sleep enough, leptin drops and ghrelin rises. That means the next day, even if you've eaten enough, your brain tells you you're starving. So now you're stressed, underslept, hungry, and your brain is nudging you toward high-calorie, low-effort foods. You're not weak, you're neurochemically misaligned. Now, if we want to reset this in 14 days, we need to target the root of the problem: the brain's response to light, sleep, and stress. These are the levers that allow us to recalibrate the fat loss thermostat in a sustainable, science-based way. Here's how. First, get morning sunlight within the first 30 to 60 minutes of waking. I can't emphasize this enough. This isn't some trendy biohack. Morning light hits specific cells in your eyes, melanopsin ganglion cells, that signal to your brain that it's time to be alert. This anchors your circadian rhythm, which in turn regulates cortisol and melatonin release. When you see bright natural light in the morning, cortisol rises briefly and naturally, which is good. It gives you energy and focus, but more importantly, it allows cortisol to fall later in the day when you need to wind down. Without morning light, your brain stays confused. Cortisol drifts later, you feel wired at night, and your sleep suffers. If you do just this one thing, get outside early for 10 minutes, it creates a cascade that improves sleep quality, reduces stress, and ultimately lowers body fat. Next, establish a consistent wake up and wind down time. Your brain is tuned for rhythm. Disrupt that rhythm and every system, metabolic, hormonal, emotional, gets thrown off. If you wake at 6 a.m. one day and 9 a.m. the next, your hypothalamus struggles to predict when to release hormones like cortisol, ghrelin, and insulin. The result? You feel hungrier, more fatigued, and less motivated to move. So for 14 days, anchor your circadian rhythm by waking and going to bed within the same 60-minute window, even on weekends. It might feel rigid, but it's freeing once you realize how much better your body performs when it's not guessing what time it is. There's another crucial step: eliminating artificial light exposure late at night, especially from screens. Blue light from phones and TVs tricks your brain into thinking it's still daytime. This delays melatonin production, the hormone that helps you fall asleep and stay asleep. Without enough melatonin, your sleep becomes shallow, and shallow sleep means your brain never fully gets to reset your metabolism, your insulin sensitivity declines, and fat loss slows. So at least 60 minutes before bed, dim your lights, put your phone away, and if you have to use screens, wear blue light, blue chink glasses. This isn't about perfection. It's about signaling safety and predictability to your brain. Now let's talk about something almost no one mentions when it comes to fat loss: deliberate physiological sighing. This is not mindfulness. This is not meditation. This is a simple, fast-acting way to reset your autonomic nervous system, the system responsible for fight, flight, or rest. A physiological sigh is 2 quick inhales through the nose, followed by a long exhale through the mouth. Do one of these every few minutes when you're stressed, or just 3-5 reps before bed. This activates the parasympathetic nervous system and tells your brain, we're not under threat. It's safe to let go. And when your brain believes you're safe, cortisol drops. When cortisol drops, fat-burning hormones like growth hormone and norepinephrine can function properly. Let's step back for a moment. The reason your brain blocks fat loss isn't because it's broken. It's because it's working exactly as it's designed, to protect you from perceived danger. But if you never give it a break, if you never give it safety cues, then the emergency signals never turn off. That's why so many people plateau despite working hard. They're fighting a brain that believes it must store fat to survive. So the 14-day reset is not about forcing your body to burn fat. It's about convincing your brain that it's okay to let go of fat. Part of that process involves reducing perceived stress through predictability and routine. This is where the 14-day structure becomes powerful. Waking up at the same time, eating meals at similar intervals, getting light at regular hours, and having a wind-down routine at night, all of this creates a pattern the brain can rely on. And predictability equals safety in the brain. When your brain feels safe, it stops sending the store fat signals and allows the metabolic systems to work as intended. Also, I want you to understand how powerful sleep is when it comes to the actual mechanics of fat burning. During deep sleep, specifically slow-wave sleep, your brain releases pulses of growth hormone. This is one of the most potent fat-burning, muscle-preserving hormones in your body. But you only get these pulses if you hit deep sleep, and you only get deep sleep if your cortisol is low, melatonin is high, and your circadian rhythm is intact. So everything we're doing is upstream of that. This is how the reset works. Now, if you're someone who has tried calorie counting or macro tracking and still hit a wall, this might be the missing link. If your brain believes you are in danger because of stress, poor sleep, or unpredictable routines, it will override your willpower. That's not failure, that's survival. The brain is wired to win that battle every time. So we don't fight it. We rewire it. And it happens faster than you think. Within 3 days of consistent sleep and morning light, you'll notice your hunger stabilizing. By day 7, your energy throughout the day becomes more even. By day 10, your cravings drop. By day 14, you're no longer constantly thinking about food because your hormones are finally working with you, not against you. This doesn't mean you can't enjoy flexibility in the future, but the reset period is a commitment to showing your brain through action and repetition that your environment is safe, predictable, and supportive of energy balance. That's when the metabolic thermostat adjusts downward. That's when fat loss becomes sustainable, not because you're forcing it, but because your brain no longer resists it. You're not broken. Your willpower isn't weak. Your body is intelligent, and it's waiting for the signal that it's okay to thrive. Give it that signal through light sleep, rhythm, and breathing, and in 14 days, you'll feel the shift. This is what we teach here at Mindset Motivation, not just how to work harder, but how to work smarter with your biology, not against it. Your brain isn't your enemy, it's your greatest tool. Once it knows, you're finally safe to change. Let's talk about something most fat loss programs completely ignore, and yet it's one of the most powerful levers you can pull to shift your metabolism: dopamine. Not just in the brain, but in the entire system that controls your motivation, your cravings, and how your body responds to food. When people think about dopamine, they usually think of pleasure or addiction. And while that's partially true, dopamine is actually your brain's currency for motivation, drive, and anticipation. The key word there is anticipation. Dopamine isn't really about reward, it's about the pursuit of reward. It's the chemical that tells your brain that thing out there might be worth chasing. But in the modern world, that system has been hijacked. And when it comes to fat loss, that hijack is the silent killer of progress. The foods you crave, chips, cookies, fast food, ultra sweet or salty snacks weren't just designed to taste good, they were designed to spike your dopamine system. You eat them and your brain lights up, not just from the taste, but from the expectation of that taste the next time. The problem is, every time you get a spike in dopamine from food, the baseline drops a little. That means you need more next time to feel the same level of pleasure. You're not overeating because you're hungry. You're overeating because your brain is caught in a loop, and that loop is keeping you from burning fat. This is why willpower fails. You might be able to resist for a few days, maybe a week, but if your baseline dopamine is low because you've been chasing artificial highs, then real food won't feel rewarding, workouts won't feel exciting, and rest won't feel satisfying. So your brain will push you back toward the thing it knows delivers quick dopamine, processed food. And suddenly, it's not just a cheat meal, it's a relapse into the same neurochemical trap. If we want to reset the system in 14 days, we have to understand how to rebalance dopamine. That doesn't mean eliminating all pleasure. It means restoring your brain's sensitivity to natural rewards, movement, light, sleep, social connection, whole food. But to do that, we have to first remove the overload. That means cutting out hyperpalatable, ultra-processed foods, not just for calorie control, but because these foods distort your dopamine perception. When you eat something with the perfect blend of sugar, fat, and salt, your brain records it as an evolutionary jackpot. That's not a theory, that's real neurochemistry. You're training your brain that only those foods are worth pursuing. So when you go back to a simple plate of salmon and vegetables, it feels boring. That's not your fault. That's a temporary dopamine imbalance. For 14 days, your goal is to simplify your inputs. Real food, clean protein, healthy fats, fibrous vegetables, complex carbohydrates, no added sugars, no processed oils, and no artificial flavor explosions. At first, this might feel bland, but give your brain time, and within days, it will start to recalibrate. That's when a strawberry tastes sweet again. That's when your hunger cues return, and that's when your body starts burning fat, because it's no longer being bombarded by signals to store energy. But there's another layer to this, one that has to do with timing. Dopamine isn't just about what you eat. It's about when you seek reward. Every time you eat something immediately upon waking or grab a snack the moment you feel bored or stressed, you're reinforcing the habit of instant gratification. Over time, this wires your brain to expect dopamine right away. The result? You lose the ability to wait. You lose the ability to feel satisfied by effort. And this impacts every area of health, not just food. So, part of the reset is not just about what you remove, but how you delay. For these 14 days, implement strategic periods of dopamine control. Wait 90 to 120 minutes after waking before you eat. This isn't about fasting for fat loss. It's about teaching your brain to delay gratification. Do your first bout of movement, whether it's a walk, some mobility work, or a full workout, before you reward yourself with a meal. That sequence trains your brain to associate effort first, reward second. And that pattern rewires your motivation loop. Here's the thing. Most people are stuck in the reverse. Their day starts with a dopamine flood, caffeine, phone scrolling, sugar, noise, and ends in burnout. They've front-loaded reward and back-loaded stress. And that kills fat loss because the body doesn't burn fat when it's in survival mode. The 14-day reset inverts this. It creates a rhythm of delayed earned rewards. That builds resilience, mental clarity, and metabolic flexibility. Now, you might be wondering, isn't dopamine something I need to feel good? Absolutely. But the goal is not to eliminate dopamine. The goal is to flatten the spikes so your baseline can rise. When your baseline dopamine rises, you start enjoying small things again. You don't need a cookie to feel pleasure. You feel good after a workout. You feel focused after a cold shower. You feel satisfied from a balanced meal. That's real dopamine balance. That's how your brain is supposed to work. Another crucial part of the reset is movement, but not just any movement. It's movement that reinforces your dopamine system's natural rhythm. That means training earlier in the day, ideally in natural light. Why? Because movement in the morning, in sunlight, stimulates the release of dopamine precursors. These are chemicals your brain uses to make dopamine tyrosine, phenylalanine, and sunlight enhances their uptake. This is not about weightlifting or HIIT or long cardio. It can be as simple as a brisk walk, but do it early, do it often, and do it before your first meal. Social connection also plays a massive role in regulating dopamine. If you isolate yourself, especially during stress, your brain starts to look for synthetic connection. That often shows up as food. But even short interactions, eye contact, laughter, physical touch, can help restore dopamine tone. So in this reset, reach out, talk to someone, share your progress. This isn't just about food. It's about rehumanizing your experience. Your brain is wired for connection, and that connection helps regulate cravings, improve mood, and keep you on track. Now, here's something deeper. When you go through this reset, you're going to confront discomfort. That's good. That's your nervous system stretching its threshold. When you resist the urge to snack and you choose to breathe instead of binge, you're not just making a good choice, you're strengthening your prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for self-control, focus, and long-term decision-making. And the more you use that system, the stronger it gets. This is neuroplasticity in real time. You are literally reshaping your brain's response to stress and desire. That's why this reset works. It changes your biology, not just your behavior. People often ask, well, I have to live like this forever. And the answer is no. But after 14 days, you won't want to go back. Because once you experience the clarity, energy, and peace that come from dopamine balance, processed foods lose their grip. They stop calling your name. You can eat them occasionally without spiraling, because now you're operating from a place of stability, not deficiency. You're not broken, you're not lazy, you're just caught in a loop. And the brain doesn't break loops with shame or restriction, it breaks them with rhythm, awareness, and practice. That's what this reset offers, a structured way to reclaim your reward system. And here's the beautiful part. When you reset your dopamine system, everything else starts to work better. Your sleep improves, your cravings drop, your workouts feel purposeful, you stop chasing energy because you have energy. You're no longer stuck in a cycle of highs and crashes. You're steady, you're clear, you're back in control. This is the work we believe in at Mindset Motivation, not just grinding harder, but aligning your biology with your goals. When your brain is balanced, fat loss isn't a fight. It's a byproduct of living in sync. If we're serious about fat loss, and I mean sustainable long-term fat loss, not just a quick drop on the scale, then we have to look at what's happening in the brain, not just the body. See, most people think insulin resistance starts in the muscles or the liver. That's what you hear in mainstream fitness. But the truth is, insulin resistance often starts in the brain, more specifically in the hypothalamus, which is the command center for your metabolic system. When this part of your brain becomes inflamed or dysregulated, the signals it sends out to the rest of the body to store fat, to release fat, to burn energy or conserve it, those signals get confused. So you can be eating well, even moving regularly, but if your brain isn't sensing nutrients and energy properly, your metabolism doesn't respond the way it should. That's where fat loss stalls. Let's break this down because it's essential to understand the mechanism if we're going to reset it in 14 days. Your brain has sensors for glucose, insulin, leptin, ghrelin, all these hormones that influence hunger, fullness, energy storage, and fat burning. These sensors exist largely in the hypothalamus. When your brain is healthy and sensitive to these signals, it can tell the body, we're good, you can burn fat now. But when the hypothalamus becomes inflamed, which can happen from poor diet, lack of movement, too much processed food, or even high levels of stress, it stops responding to those signals. That's when the system breaks down. What causes that inflammation? It's not just sugar or carbs, as a lot of diet culture would have you believe. It's the combination of poor food quality, erratic eating patterns, sedentary behavior, and If your brain is constantly being bombarded by artificial food cues, erratic dopamine spikes, and disrupted sleep, it begins to interpret your environment as unsafe or unpredictable. And when the brain feels unsafe, it defaults to survival. That means storing fat, increasing hunger, and slowing metabolism. It's not a conscious decision. It's a deeply ingrained biological response. But here's the good news. This kind of neuroinflammation is reversible, and not over months or years, but often in just a couple of weeks. The brain is plastic. It can adapt, heal, and rewire, but it needs the right environment. That's what the 14-day reset is about, creating the environment where your brain can once again become metabolically intelligent. And when the brain is dialed in, the body follows. So how do we create that environment? It starts with reducing the inflammatory inputs and increasing the restorative ones. One of the most effective ways to do this is by introducing daily periods of fasting. Not extreme fasting, but a gentle 12 to 16 hour fast each day. When you fast, you give your brain a break from constant insulin signaling. That break allows the hypothalamus to become more sensitive to insulin again. You're not forcing your body to burn fat. You're allowing your brain to regain control over when and how fat is burned. That's a big distinction. Now, fasting isn't about starvation. It's about rhythm. The brain loves rhythm. When you eat at random times, snack constantly, or eat late at night, your brain never knows what to expect. That unpredictability creates stress. But when you set a consistent eating window, say 10 a.m. to 6 p.m., the brain starts to anticipate food. It regulates insulin better. It lowers inflammation. Hormones like ghrelin and leptin start to behave the way they were designed. And you begin to burn fat more efficiently, not because you're eating less, but because your brain has stopped resisting fat loss. Movement is another powerful reset tool, especially after meals. The science here is strong. Just 10 to 15 minutes of walking after you eat helps your muscles absorb glucose more efficiently. That means less circulating insulin. Lower insulin means more access to stored fat. But again, the key is rhythm, consistency. Post-meal movement isn't about burning calories. It's about creating a neurochemical pattern. You eat, then you move. That tells your brain this is a well-regulated system. We're not in danger. We can burn fat safely. Another overlooked factor in reducing brain-based insulin resistance is omega-3 fatty acids. These are essential fats, meaning your body can't produce them on its own. You have to get them from food, and they play a critical role in reducing neuroinflammation. Omega-3s help restore fluidity in brain cell membranes, which allows for better hormone signaling. When the brain's insulin receptors become more fluid and functional, the whole body starts to respond better to insulin. This can come from wild-caught fish like salmon or from high-quality supplements. And if you combine omega-3 intake with regular movement and fasting, you create a trifecta that powerfully reduces insulin resistance at the brain level. But we also have to look at the role of polyphenols, compounds found in things like berries, olive oil, dark chocolate, and green tea. These compounds don't just act as antioxidants. They interact directly with the gut-brain axis, supporting the production of brain-directed neurotrophic factor, or BDNF. BDNF helps the brain grow new connections, adapt to new routines, and become more metabolically flexible. So when you increase polyphenol intake, especially during this 14-day reset, you're essentially giving your brain the raw materials it needs to rewire. Now, none of this works if your sleep is out of alignment. That's the foundation. When you're sleep deprived, your brain becomes less sensitive to insulin. This happens in a single night. So during the reset, sleep is non-negotiable. Get to bed around the same time each night. Cut screen exposure at least an hour before. Use breathing exercises or meditation if needed to lower nighttime cortisol. Because if cortisol is high when you're trying to sleep, fat loss shuts off. It's that simple. And what about hydration? Most people underestimate the role of water in brain metabolism. Even mild dehydration can impair insulin signaling in the brain. So during the reset, start your day with water before coffee, before food. Keep it simple. Add a pinch of sea salt or a squeeze of lemon if you like, but make hydration a priority. It's not just for performance. It's for metabolic communication. What we're really doing here across these 14 days is teaching the brain that it can trust the environment again, that it doesn't need to be in emergency mode. When you create structure, fasting windows, post-meal movement, anti-inflammatory nutrients, better sleep, your brain starts to relax. And in that relaxed rhythmic state, fat loss becomes almost effortless because the system is no longer fighting itself. And this is where the big shift happens. Once your brain starts sending the right signals again, we're nourished, we're rested, we're moving, we're safe, your body begins to respond automatically. Your hunger stabilizes, your cravings drop. You start reaching for whole foods without forcing it. You don't feel the need to snack every hour because your brain no longer interprets every gap between meals as a threat. That's how powerful this reset is. People often ask, what if I've been insulin resistant for years? That's okay. The brain is incredibly resilient. You don't need to fix everything overnight. You just need to give it a window, 14 days of consistency, of rhythm, of reduced chaos. And what you'll find is that your body begins to catch up, because it's never been about just willpower. It's been about giving your brain the right environment to lead. That's what we focus on here at Mindset Motivation. This isn't about hacks or tricks. It's about biology. It's about working with your nervous system, your hormones, and your brain's metabolic intelligence. You can't out-diet a dysregulated brain, but you can reset that brain one habit, one rhythm, one day at a time. Let's close this loop by addressing something that goes deeper than food, deeper than exercise, and even deeper than hormones. Because even when someone is eating right, moving daily, and sleeping better, they can still struggle to lose fat. And it's not because they're broken. It's because their nervous system is stuck in a state of chronic stress. And this state, whether you're aware of it or not, is keeping your body from burning fat efficiently. The body only enters a true fat-burning state when it feels safe. That's not a mindset trick. That's hardwired physiology. See, your nervous system operates on two primary modes, sympathetic and parasympathetic. The sympathetic system is your fight or flight response. It's designed to get you out of danger. The parasympathetic system is rest, digest, and recover. The problem is that most people today are living 90% of their day in the sympathetic mode, constantly stimulated, chronically alert, endlessly consuming, scrolling, reacting, rushing. Their body is physically in a safe environment, but their brain doesn't feel that way. Their nervous system interprets modern life, emails, deadlines, traffic, blue light, news, as a constant threat. And what happens when the brain perceives threat, even if the threat is just psychological, it sends signals to preserve energy. It downregulates thyroid hormones, slows metabolism, and ramps up cortisol. Cortisol isn't bad. It's essential in the short term, but when it stays elevated, it starts to work against you. It increases insulin levels. It makes you crave fast energy, sugar, processed food, anything quick and comforting. It stores more fat, especially around the midsection, and it makes your body hesitant to let go of that fat, even when you're eating clean and working out. Now, here's the tricky part. You might not feel stressed. You might think, well, I'm fine, I'm just busy. But if you're waking up already tired, if you're eating without actually tasting your food, if you're constantly thinking about what's next or what's missing, that's sympathetic dominance. That's your nervous system locked in a pattern. And that pattern, over time, becomes your metabolic baseline. So if we're serious about resetting the brain for fat loss, we must prioritize nervous system regulation. This is just as important, if not more important, than nutrition, because without a regulated nervous system, your body doesn't hear the fat loss signals, it hears survival. That's why one of the most powerful parts of the 14-day reset is learning how to shift into parasympathetic mode on command, not once in a while, not just on the weekends, but daily, consistently. And the good news is it doesn't require hours of meditation or expensive biohacking gear. It requires intention, breath, stillness, and presence. Let's start with breath. Your breath is the remote control of your nervous system. Shallow, fast breathing keeps you in fight or flight. Deep, slow, nasal breathing shifts you into rest and digest. Just 5 minutes of slow breathing, inhale for 4 seconds, exhale for 6 to 8, can completely rewire your state. Do that before meals, after workouts, before bed. That's not wasted time. That's your brain and body syncing up. That's how you tell your system, we're safe, we can relax, we can burn fat now. Another tool is morning light. First thing after waking, get outside, even on cloudy days. 5 to 10 minutes of natural light signals the brain to release the right neurochemicals, dopamine, serotonin, cortisol, in the proper rhythm. That light exposure is what anchors your circadian rhythm. It aligns your internal clock with the external world. And when that clock is aligned, your hunger signals, energy levels, and fat burning processes work like they're supposed to. But beyond breath and light, the nervous system craves rhythm. This means consistent sleep and wake time, regular meals, daily movement, not rigid discipline, but gentle consistency. Because every time your day is chaotic, every time your schedule is unpredictable, your nervous system sees that as instability. And instability equals threat. So even if you're eating clean, if you're constantly skipping meals, working out at random hours, and going to bed at 2 a.m. one day and 10 p.m. the next, your body interprets that as danger. And in danger, fat storage is a survival mechanism. Now let's talk about emotional regulation. Because no reset is complete without facing the inner world. Emotional stress, resentment, anxiety, guilt, fear, it's just as metabolically disruptive as junk food. And many people are carrying layers of unprocessed emotion that keep their nervous system on high alert. This doesn't mean you have to fix everything in 14 days, but it does mean you have to start noticing. Pay attention to how you speak to yourself. Notice what triggers your anxiety or irritability. Create space, even just 10 minutes a day, to sit with your thoughts instead of running from them. This is why journaling is such a powerful tool. When you write down what you're feeling without judgment, without editing, you offload mental noise. You begin to slow down your thoughts. That simple act can calm the amygdala, the emotional center of the brain, and bring your system back into regulation. And that, again, is where fat loss starts. Not in the macros or the reps, but in a body that no longer thinks it's being hunted. Social connection also plays a role here. We're wired for belonging. Isolation is a stressor. So during this reset, connect. Talk to someone face to face. Share a meal. Laugh. Eye contact. Conversation. Community. These are primal regulators. They tell your nervous system, we're not alone, we're supported. We can exhale. And that exhale creates space for healing, for release, for metabolic flexibility. Now, here's something most people miss. Your thoughts are physical. They produce chemicals. So when you wake up already stressed, check your phone, scroll through negativity, worry about what's ahead, you're generating a real hormonal state. And that state becomes your metabolic environment. But the opposite is also true. When you start your day with calm, gratitude, presence, movement, breath, and light, you create a chemical environment of clarity and safety. And in that environment, your body doesn't fight you. It works with you. We often look for the next supplement or trick or diet change when what we really need is to reset the way our body feels, to shift out of emergency mode and back into alignment. Because when you live in a body that feels safe, fat loss isn't a constant struggle. It's a natural consequence of regulation. And this doesn't mean stress disappears. Life is always going to offer stress. But when you build a foundation of nervous system strength through breath, light, rhythm, rest, connection, you become more resilient. You bounce back faster. You don't get knocked out of balance so easily. That's the goal, not to avoid stress, but to recover quickly. That recovery is what keeps your metabolism flexible. Think about it like this. The most efficient fat-burning machine is a body that knows how to shift between states, alert and calm, active and restful, focused and relaxed. That's metabolic agility. That's nervous system flexibility. And that's what we're training in these 14 days. You're not just resetting your habits. You're resetting your brain's interpretation of the world. You're telling your system, we're not in crisis. We're building. We're safe. We can thrive now. And the body listens to that. This is the deep work. And it's the kind of work we lean into here at Mindset Motivation. Because fat loss isn't just about burning calories. It's about becoming someone whose state supports that goal, not just for 2 weeks, but for life. And when that shift clicks, when your brain, your body, and your breath begin working in harmony, you'll notice the change. Not just in the mirror, but in your energy, your calm, your hunger, your sleep, your clarity. You'll stop asking, why isn't this working? Because now everything is working from the inside out. That's the moment the reset becomes your new normal.